Hello guys, welcome to Network Beats. This is Tangadurai, and today we are going to look into a config for iBGP and eBGP, and we have seen some basic introduction of BGP and the BGP messages, neighbor states, and how the TCP play in BGP protocol, the neighborship process. This is everything that we have seen in our previous video. So in this video, we'll look into it how to build our BGP neighborship up, and we'll see how does it work. Okay. So here we already know that router 3 and router 5 are iBGP neighbors, and router 3 and router 4 are eBGP peers, right? And how they are different from the configuration perspective. Okay. So the IP addresses are already configured. Let's verify that. Show IP interface brief. Uh, Let me just filter only with up interfaces. So these are the interfaces. Pipeline include up. Same for router 4. And let's check for router 5. Okay, all good to go now. So let's start with a config from router 3. So here we have to type router BGP, and router 3 belongs to autonomous system number 35, that you have to give it over here 35. And the main thing is something called a router ID in the BGP. That means what is router ID? Okay, it is just a ID which is recognized by that means like router 3 can be recognized by its peer neighbor routers. For time being, I'm not giving any router ID, and will explain it more after this configuration for iBGP and eBGP peers. Okay, let's focus on our neighborship configurations. So let me make uh, neighborship with router 5 first. So you have to type the neighbor command, and you have to type the IP address of your neighbor. Let me give 35.0.0.5 is my neighbor, and my neighbor belongs to remote AS, which is same, which is AS35. So type remote AS, and AS number is 35. Okay, that's it you have to do. Okay, same you have to do in router 5. Configure terminal, router BGP, and router 5 belongs to AS35, so type AS35 here, and the neighbor command here, it is 35.003. It is the IP for the router 3, and my router 3 belongs to AS again 35, which makes sense for us to understand these are iBGP peers. Okay, once I hit enter, we can see the neighborship is coming up. Sorry guys. So BGP is a slow comparatively IGP protocols like OSPF, ISIS, and EIGRP. So we have to wait for some more time. Here we have we are seeing already the neighborship is up comparatively OSPF and EIGRP. BGP process is little slow. Okay, that we have to understand. So how to verify our neighbor table? Okay, so show IP BGP summary is a command to check our neighbor informations. So this is the neighbor table. We can see who is our neighbor and what BGP version they are running, and what is the autonomous system number they are from. And here I'm seeing 0 under the state slash prefix received, and the timer whatever I see here, it is up timer because I'm seeing some number under column state or prefix received. Okay, so the neighbor is up since last 36 seconds. Okay, that's good. Okay, so here the thing, router 3 and router 5 are directly connected each other, right? So here there is no matter because R3 know how to reach 35005 and R5 know how to reach 35003 without any extra configuration for routing purposes since they are connected on the same subnet. You guys agree with me, right? Okay. What if I'm trying to form a neighborship between R3 and R5 using their loopback IP address? Okay. What I'll do, uh, let me just remove that neighborship configuration router BGP 35, and what I have configured here is neighbor. Let me just remove that. Same from router 3. Let me put no. I'm sorry, guys. So we have removed our neighbor statement from router BGP, and now if we look into it, we could see BGP down neighbor is deleted. That means the configuration is deleted. Do show IP BGP summary. We do not see any neighborship at this moment since we don't have any configuration under the router BGP for the neighbor statement. Okay, so here you guys know I have told you without any routing configuration we are able to ping dot 5 from router 3 and sorry, and also we can ping 35003 from router 5 since they are locally connected. Oh sorry, typo error, 35003 it is. See, we are able to ping. So now my agenda is from router 3 I have a loopback IP address configured already, which is 3.3.3.3, and in router 5 I have loopback IP address 5.5.5 which is already configured. I'm trying to form a neighborship between router 3 loopback router 3's loopback address and router 5 loopback address. Okay, in this case, first we have to think whether router 3 know how to reach 5.5.5, and again vice versa whether router 5 know how to reach 3.3.3. Let's check the routing table. Show IP route for 5.5.5.5. Okay, there is no network in the routing table. So now in router 5 3.3.3.3, I do not have any route for this particular IP. So first we have to make sure router 3 know how to reach router 5 and router 5 know how to reach router 3's loopback IP address. So in order to do that, you can either use a static route or you can use any other IGP protocols in order to achieve the connectivity between router 3 and router 5 loopback IP addresses. So here I'm just going to make a static route from router 3 to router 5 to reach the R5's loopback IP address. So the next hop IP address what I would give here is 35.0.0.5. Okay, and similarly in router 5, uh, configure terminal IP route 3.3.3.3 is my destination IP and my destination subnet mask, and my next hop IP address is 35.0.0.3. So here when I ping, before pinging let us check the routing table for 3. Show IP route 3.3.3.3. It is known as static, and this is our next hop IP to reach this particular routing entry. So let's try pinging now 3.3.3.3. Okay, so now we are able to reach router 3's loopback IP address and router 5 loopback IP address. Great. Okay. So always when you're trying to ping these IPs, my suggestion is try to ping from source loopback address because you are trying to establish a neighborship from your loopback address to the remote neighbor loopback address. So you should check the connectivity from your loopback address as a source rather than a normal ping, because when you do this command, uh, this will take the source address as the exit interface IP address. So router 3 exit interface IP address would be to reach 5.5.5 IP address would be gigabit 1/0. So in this interface we have configured the IP 35003. So 35003 would be a source address when you do this command, right? Do ping 5.5.5.5. So when you do when you specific source as loopback 0, okay, now your source will be your loopback, the IP address what it is configured under loopback 0, that is 3.3.3.3. So if you guys are not sure about it, we can do a quick debug. Okay, let debug IP ICMP. Okay. Now, whatever the IP ICMP whatever the traffic coming related to ICMP protocol, it would be captured here. Okay. So let me ping without source loopback. Okay. That is 5.5.5.5. Okay. And repeat count is 1. Okay. Success rate is 100%. I'm able to reach. Sorry, guys. Also, it is being captured here in router 5. Debugging logs. Here we can see the ICMP echo reply sent from source 5.5.5 to the destination is what? So router 5 destination is 35003, right? Which is a gigabit 1/0's IP address of router 3. Okay. So when you do source loopback 0, right? And also let me repeat count 1 instead of. Okay, now the success rate is 100%. I'm able to ping. Here now, the difference is, okay, source is same because we are pinging to 5.5.5. So he is the one responsible to uh, send the reply back, echo reply back. But this time the destination address is 3.3.3 because 3.3.3 initiated the ping request, echo request from here. For that, we are receiving the echo reply. Okay, so this is clear. And debug all. Okay. So now connectivity is there. Let's get into the BGP config. Router BGP 35. Okay, here my neighbor this time is going to be router 5.5.5.5 and remote AS is 35. Right? I need to hit this enter now. Then router 5. Here router BGP same 35. Here my neighbor is going to be 3.3.3.3 remote AS 35, right? So when you done this config in the previous example, you were seeing the neighborship was coming up, but this time your neighborship is not going to come up. The reason is when BGP is trying to establish a neighborship with your neighbor router. In this case, when router 3 is trying to establish a neighborship with router 5, okay, here the open message, hello, whatever, everything is sent in the perspective of gig 1/0. Okay, that means it uses the address 35003 as a source, not router 3's loopback IP address. So whenever router 5 is receiving a BGP message, it will not come from router 3's loopback IP address. Okay, so router 5 will never agree upon that because router 5 configuration in router 5 configuration we have neighbor of only 333, not for 35003. Okay, so whatever the update come from 35003, just router 5 is going to neglect it directly. Okay, so how to achieve this, how to overcome this problem, in this scenario when we are trying to form a neighborship over the loopback IP address. It is so simple. You just type neighbor, a neighbor address. Here, your update source would be, okay, you have to type what is your source interface. Okay, so here my source interface is loopback 0. So whenever you are trying to initiate any kind of BGP message to the neighbor 5.5.5, your source IP should be from your loopback 0. Okay, so when I hit enter, this would, here we could see the neighborship is up. Okay, because here when router 3 is sending the message initiated from the source of router 3 loopback, router 5 is good from his config as well. So he will agree that okay, you can be my neighbor. Okay, that means our neighborship is getting built. But the recommend but you notice here that we do not have any update source loopback in router 5. Okay, but this is not a good practice. Also, whenever you are doing any kind of configuration in this fashion, always have both end configured with the update source loopback. Okay, so in this case, let me do update source loopback is 0. Okay, it is not going to affect your neighborship, but this is a best practice that one can follow in order to configure when they are trying to form a neighborship using their loopback IP addresses. Now let's see, show IP BGP summary. Okay, we have a neighbor here, okay, which is 333, and in router 3 we have the neighbor which is 5.5.5.5. Okay, and it is up since 1 minute 24 seconds. Okay, so we are good till this point. So our iBGP peer is established. How do we know whether it is iBGP peer or the eBGP peer? So show IP BGP neighbor, and you have to type your neighbor IP. Okay. So this is complete whole details of your neighbor. You don't have to go through everything. Just see who is your BGP neighbor 5.5.5.5, and the neighbor is from remote AS35, and there is something called internal link. This says this neighbor is your iBGP peer.